Season 2 of Arcane reignited the JayVik ship, and as a result, a war began. Shippers and anti-shippers battled fiercely across Reddit and comment sections alike. This war might have been focused on the JayVik ship, but that isn't what started this fight. People have been pushing back against queer ships for decades, and today I want to explore why. Why do people get so upset about queer ships? Well, I think I have an answer for you, but before we dig into Jayce and Viktor, let me tell you a story. JayVik, I'm feeling JayVik. This past summer, I created a video titled The Queer Subtext of Steel Ball Run. In that video, I explore the manga's two main characters and their individual character arcs, and talk about how they can be read as queer through the underlying themes within. I emphasize at multiple points in the video that I'm not arguing that these characters are secretly gay or anything like that, but instead I'm just trying to point out how a queer person could see themselves in these stories. Even though I made my points very clear, I still got comments like these ones.
Stop making stuff gay. This is the reason why it will never get in an anime.
Absolute projection. Almost nothing about the series is gay in any way besides a few minor characters. The show itself is about a family tree made up of straight relationships. Get real.
I don't mean to offend anyone, just stating my opinion, but I feel like the people of the LGBTQ community constantly make things constantly gay. I feel every piece of media I consume and see a post about coming from a member of the LGBTQ are always trying to say characters are gay, and it comes off quite self-absorbed. Now, coming back to JoJo. Yes, JoJo is very gay, I admit, but the relationship of Johnny and Gyro is that of friends. It's fair to say that my video made some people upset, especially if you look at the like to dislike ratio.
What the hell?
However, one thing was very clear. These people didn't watch the video. I know this due to the video's watch time and because of that third commenter I showed. I replied to that third commenter and I emphasized my main point of the video to them. That commenter ended up watching the video and they later commented, "My bad, I just finished watching the video and everything I said about it is wrong. Sorry." The people that my video angered saw a thumbnail on their homepage that implied that a friendship that they like might be gay, proceeded to dislike the video, leave a rude comment, and then leave. This whole experience had me asking why? Why do some people get upset when other people see something gay in a close male friendship? Spoiler alert, it's not just homophobia. Like I said, there's a whole lot more to this conversation. Homophobia certainly plays a part in it, and we will be coming back to that later, but it's not the sole reason that people get upset when they see others shipping a male friendship. In order to really dig into these ideas, we first need to establish a foundation around Jayce and Viktor's relationship. Spoilers for Arcane ahead. Part 1. Laying the foundation. Viktor and Jayce. If I wanted to sum up Arcane in one word, I'd say relationships. The show is absolutely defined by the relationships between its characters. Caitlyn and Vi and Jinx, Vander and Silco, and even Piltover and Zahn. Each of these relationships consist of a few common themes. They have something that unites them, something that divides them, and then something that brings them back together. Viktor and Jayce are no different. Jayce and Viktor meet for the first time at the start of episode 2. Viktor is the assistant to the dean, and so he's helping investigate the explosion that took place in Jayce's study. Jayce has been using illegal technology to research magic, and as a result of all of this, he's put on trial for his actions. Jayce's trial results in his expulsion from the university, but it also causes Viktor to approach him afterwards, and he offers to help Jayce with his research. Act 1 of Season 1 ends with the pair succeeding in advancing the research and with the council embracing their success. Arcane has a large time skipped before the next act. After a number of years filled with hard work and research, Jayce and Viktor have created incredible technologies with their hex tech, like the hex gates that allow instant transport across large distances. Their efforts have brought a lot of prosperity to Piltover. When we catch up with the pair, they're currently working on new technology that can help make people's lives easier. This is the goal that unites them. Unfortunately, that unity doesn't last long because Jayce starts to focus more on his newfound fame and political power that Hextech has brought him. Viktor, on the other hand, is sick and dying, and so he's even more motivated to push their technology to the masses before he eventually passes. This split in their individual goals is highlighted wonderfully through a scene in episode 5. The scene in question is the sex scene between Jayce and Mel. While the pair are getting intimate, we have shots of Viktor working on Hextech development interspersed throughout. This highlights where each character's focus is pointed. Jayce is focused on politics while Viktor is focused on Hextech. The divide that's formed between the pair only grows as season 1 carries forward. Jayce eventually caves on his personal ideals and he makes hex-tech weapons, while Viktor makes strides in his hex-tech development at the cost of using magic meth to do so. By the final episode of the first season, each character has seen the errors in their ways. Jayce accidentally kills a kid with his hex-tech hammer, and Viktor vaporizes his assistant while performing a dangerous experiment. The first season ends with the pair briefly reunited. Season 2 picks up right where the first one left off, with Jinx's rocket hitting the council chamber. The blast pretty much kills Viktor, and he's only saved after Jayce brings him to the hex core. The core engulfs Viktor and it begins to change him. You can go ahead and call me a hex core because I also like to engulf twinks. When Viktor wakes up in episode 2, he's upset. Jayce had promised to destroy the hex core at the end of season 1 due to the danger it posed, but he ignored that promise in order to save Viktor. Viktor states that their paths have been diverging for a while and it was only affection that held them together. Then he leaves. For the next few episodes, each researcher continues to explore Hextech. Jayce starts to see the dangers contained within, and Viktor starts to see its potential to heal. When the two scientists eventually reconnect, Jayce kills him.
I started blasting. Bang!
Viktor is once again saved by death, but this time it's only thanks to Singed's intervention. Viktor lets Hextech evolve him for a final time, and the series finale begins. Viktor and Jayce face off throughout the finale, and it ends with Viktor winning. However, thanks to Echo's Z-Drive, Jayce gets a second chance to speak with his ex-boyfriend. Jayce shows Viktor the outcome of his efforts that he saw while inside the Hex Core, and then tells him that all he wants is his partner back. Viktor is snapped out of his obsession for perfection by all of this, and the two embrace and then get sucked into oblivion together. Part 2. Digging in. It's pretty gay. So I just finished watching Arcane. Who here's seen Arcane? Yeah, I see you. You know, great show, but one thing really stood out to me, and that's that Jayce and Viktor are gay as shit. Oh my god. Yeah, I know, right? You can't convince me that Jayce wasn't bottoming for Viktor. For now, I want you to put canon aside because we will discuss that next. Instead, let's focus on the substance of their relationship. Jayce and Viktor's story is ultimately about two people endlessly working toward a shared goal until their paths eventually diverge. But in the end, they're able to come back together because of their love and affection for the other. Diving a little bit deeper into it, there's a lot of subtext here that lends credibility to the idea that there might be something more going on here than just a friendship. Many different scenes highlight this in direct and indirect ways. For example, we have lines like the one from Viktor stating that it was only affection that kept them together. In more subtle ways, we have scenes like the one from season 2 episode 7 where Jayce is stuck in a pit and staring into a fire. As Jayce loses his mind, he starts to hallucinate and he sees Mel in the fire, and then Mel switches to Viktor. Jayce and Mel quite literally fucked, so the show drawing this parallel between Mel and Viktor in Jayce's mind holds significance. Yeah, it's not the JayVik hex strap scene we all wanted, but that's not how subtext works. Subtext is defined as an underlying and often distinct theme in a piece of writing or conversation. It's what's being said, but without actually saying it. Arcane is masterful at this with all of its characters. So this whole JayVik thing kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of sorts, you know? I just kept seeing hashtag Yowie on a bunch of TikTok edits.
Hell yeah!
Yeah, that guy knows what I'm talking about. Don't worry, I was saying the same thing after I looked it up. I was just scrolling through a bunch of it and I was like, Yowie? More like wowee. Okay. Alright, I'll workshop that one. As anyone who's seen Arcane probably already knows, there are countless details in the show that hint at the ideas and themes laid throughout the story. You could watch Arcane 10 times, go frame by frame even, and you'd still miss details and subtext that the writers put in. Some of these details reveal more about the world, but most reinforce character relationships. There are a ton of these details that drip with subtext between Jayce and Viktor. Like, look at the bridge scene from season 1. Viktor is stopped by the enforcers when he's returning from the Undercity. Jayce is upset and he calls people from the Undercity dangerous. Viktor then reminds him that he's from the Undercity and brushes Jayce aside as he walks back to Piltover. This scene shows us that despite Jayce's close friendship with Viktor, he's still a typical person from Piltover and he fears the Undercity and holds prejudice against its people. The same scene without any subtext would consist of Jayce saying, "Viktor, I'm afraid of the people from the Undercity. We should only be using resources from Piltover because it's safer." Viktor would then respond with, "Jayce, I'm hurt that you'd say that because I'm from the Undercity. This is going to harm our relationship." The scene as it's written does contain some direct language like the word dangerous, but the rest of that emotion and character dynamic is shown through the character's tone of voice, facial expressions, and it's read through the general background the viewer has on Piltover and Zaun. This is also how a lot of the pair's relationship is shown off. I think it's funny how Jayce is always calling Viktor his partner. He sounds like a homophobic dad trying to introduce his son's boyfriend to his Christian friends. Like, yeah, this is, Viktor. He's my son's, partner. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, come on, Jayce. You're not fooling anyone here. We all know what's going on, and certainly anyone within 100 feet of that lab can hear it. We do have scenes or moments where Jayce and Viktor might directly say things that allude to their very close connection, but we have twice as many pieces of subtext that indicate this as well, like the fire scene from season 2 that I mentioned before. Even some of those direct statements made by the characters leak with subtext. When Jayce calls Viktor his partner, it implies more than just a friendship. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're fucking, but the subtext that seeps from that word certainly implies something deeper. One of my favorite aspects about subtext is its openness to interpretation. Different viewers can get something different from the same scene, and that's why so many people see Jayce and Viktor as something queer. Their relationship is one of deep connection and undeniably one filled with love. Throughout the whole show, scenes will highlight the care they each have for one another, whether that's through Jayce's worry for Viktor or through Viktor's awe of Jayce's drive and knowledge. When future Viktor tells Jayce that only he can show him the true path forward, it solidifies them as soulmates, people connected by fate to work and live together. Is it really a surprise that some people see this deep connection as something queer? No, I don't think that's a surprise at all. However, some fans will see this discourse and get upset by it because they saw something different. They go on the defense, and typically the first word I see thrown around in that defense is our next topic, canon.
Part 3. Exploring the lore. It's not canon.
War. War never changes. When a super gay show consumed the internet, those who survived did so in great, thriving communities. Their inhabitants set out across the web to build new theories, ships, and fandom. As weeks passed, what had been the general love for Arcane united beneath the flag of the JayVik nation, dedicated to a twink and a bottom in their heartbreaking story. As the nation grew, so did their needs. Scouts spread east, seeking territory and karma in the dry and merciless expanses of Reddit. They returned with tales of a place untouched by the queerness that had scorched the rest of the fandom. JayVik Nation mobilized its army and sent it east to occupy r/Arcane and to restore it to working condition. But across Reddit, another society had arisen under a different flag. A vast army of slaves, formed from the conquest of other fandoms. Conservative men. 4 weeks have passed since the nation held the site, just barely, against the conservative onslaught. The conservatives did not retreat. Across the site, their strength gathers, campfires burning, training drums beating. I'm a courier, hired by the gay agenda to deliver a message to the people. But what seemed like a simple delivery job has taken a turn for the worse.
We have Viktor and Jayce. Today we're going to be learning about the canonization of JayVik.
JayVik Nation, I hate to break it to you, but JayVik is not canon.
Can't I just have a good time for once in my life?
Christian Link, one of the co-creators of the show, has actually directly addressed this ship on a few different occasions. While responding to a question about Viktor and Jayce's relationship, Link said,
There are really close friendships, brotherhoods if you will, really being there for each other. That was actually really important for us to explore. It seems like there's no other version for some fans that say there must be romance. These relationships can be really layered, really complex, you know?
Christian goes on to elaborate after this quote, and he makes it clear that there is love there, it's just not necessarily the romantic kind. In an interview with the Collider, Christian even states that he always saw Viktor as asexual.
To me, Viktor was always asexual, and that was always something we talked about from the very beginning. So, a romantic relationship between Jayce and Viktor was just never part of it. There's love, absolutely, but we also found it a bit... Love and relationships are so complex and take so many different forms. Viktor loves in a different way, and that's okay, no?
Arcane as a show isn't afraid to highlight queerness either. Caitlin and Vi are an explicitly lesbian couple.
You really think I needed all the guards at the Hex Gates?
And there are even a few queer side characters like the stunning trans femme furry Lest. If Viktor and Jayce were really making use of a hex strap, then the showrunners would have made that clear. So, case closed, right? My video's over. Jayce and Viktor aren't gay, and everyone who gets upset when people see them as something queer are completely justified in their anger and defense, right? Well, Of course not. Let's be completely real here. Canon doesn't matter to a person's experience with a piece of media. Let's flip the script a little bit. Let's say that a straight guy watched Brokeback Mountain and he related a lot to the love story put on display by the two main characters, but he relates to it in regards to a relationship he had with an ex-girlfriend. Is that straight guy's experience with the film invalid? No, of course not. The movie might be about a canon gay relationship, but for that viewer, the movie related to him in regards to a straight relationship he had. The themes within the romance can still impact a straight person. So, Jayce and Viktor might canonically be lab partners and really close friends with a deep love and care for one another in a platonic way, but it doesn't invalidate a queer person relating to their story in a queer or romantic way. Two people can watch the same show or read the same story and come away with completely different interpretations. The death of the author is a concept that's all about this. The idea comes from a 1967 essay by Roland Barthes. The core argument of Barthes' essay is that the individual interpretation of the reader is more important than whatever the author intended originally with their work.
In this way is revealed the whole being of writing. A text consists of multiple writings issuing from several cultures and entering into dialogue with each other, into parody, into contestation, but there is one place where this multiplicity is collected, united, and this place is not the author as we have hitherto said it was, but the reader.
This doesn't mean that a reader can't come to the same conclusion as the author's original intentions, but instead it just means that limiting the interpretations of a piece of media to the author's intentions is flawed. I believe that this idea is essential when discussing any piece of art. How art impacts you is what makes it meaningful and colorful. Getting angry because someone else got something different from a story serves no purpose except to limit expression and devalue art. In my queer subtext of Steel Ball Run video, I talk about this a little bit. I state at multiple points in the video that my reading of these stories and themes is not the only way to experience this story. I tell the viewers that if they got something different from this manga, then that's wonderful and I want to hear about it in the comments. Speaking of the comments, I've gone ahead and pinned a comment down below where I ask you what kind of non-explicitly queer stories felt queer to you. I'd also love to know about any queer stories that related to straight people. I love to hear about people's experiences with media, so I'd really appreciate it if you went and replied to that comment and told me your story. The canon on what a story is supposed to be has no bearing on what someone will get from that story. The same is true here with Viktor and Jayce. Canon might say that they're really close friends with a deep love for one another, but I read that as gay as fuck. In case it isn't obvious, I myself am queer. Because of my life experiences, the subtle and caring moments between the pair read as queer to me. Others will read those same interactions differently, and that's okay. This Reddit comment responding to the clip of Christian Link I shared earlier puts it really nicely.
Just like he said, it's a layered and complex relationship with two very layered and complex people. I don't see why it's an issue that people can have opposing interpretations. To me, it's very clear they're soulmates. To see people try to limit that into a solely platonic box or a solely romantic box is disheartening, but to each their own, I guess.
Viktor and Jayce are far more than just good friends. They have a connection that's deeper than that of brothers. Jayce and Viktor are kindred spirits whose life paths are so deeply intertwined that they simply wouldn't be who they are without the other. Some see romance in that, and others see friendship, and both are fair and valid. So with that understanding in place, why do some people get so upset about queer interpretations of media?
Part 4. Confronting the monster. Homophobia.
Alright, I know this one's kind of obvious, but it's important to cover before we dig deeper. Homophobia is alive and well in 2025 despite what other people might say. Sure, gay marriage is legal, for now. But just like with racism after the passing of the Civil Rights Act, homophobia doesn't just go away because some progress is made. In fact, we're kind of backsliding right now when it comes to queer rights. This Gallup poll shows a steep decrease in support for gay marriage in the past few years, especially among Republicans. If we average out the percentage of people who don't support gay marriage across all demographics, we get 32.3%. This means that 1 in 3 people that a gay person will pass on the street doesn't believe that they should be able to marry the person that they love. That doesn't mean that the whole 32.3% absolutely hates gay people, but this does mean that in some way that 32.3% sees gay marriage as less valuable than that of a straight marriage. The Gallup poll asked another question that really helps shine a light on this problem. They asked if same-sex relationships were morally acceptable, and only 64% of respondents said yes, with a noticeable drop-off starting a few years ago, like with the other question. The data makes it clear that even today, in 2025, about a third of Americans have some sort of problem with queer people. America's acceptance of trans people is another huge spotlight that highlights the underlying homophobia in American society. A different Gallup poll shows that around 56% of Americans view being transgender as morally unacceptable. That means that over half the people that a trans person passes on the street has a problem with their existence. These numbers clearly show that there is still homophobia baked into American society today. This doesn't mean that every person who has some issue with queer people wants them dead or imprisoned, but it does mean that they judge, dislike, fear, and sometimes even hate queer people for simply existing. Let me go back to the racism comparison I used at the start of this section. Racism is not as simple as someone thinking, oh, I hate this person because they belong to this certain race. That is certainly part of it, but it's also the extreme. Racism also includes stereotypes and the effect that they have on someone's first impression of someone else. It includes judging someone just because they have a different sounding name compared to what that person is used to seeing. And it also includes people judging others just because they have a different cultural background. In the same way, homophobia doesn't consist just of people wanting queer people locked up or sent away to camps. It also includes someone avoiding someone else because of the way they look or because of who they date. It includes judging people just because they break away from gender norms in small ways. And it even includes the assumption that all relationships on screen must be straight unless otherwise stated. The underlying homophobia that's baked inside a lot of people is an undeniable fact in our current world. If I post a video or a short wearing eyeliner or nail polish, I get a ton of angry comments about it. I've even been referred to as a thing in some of these comments just for simply presenting differently from your average person.
Is bro wearing eyeliner? What the fuck is wrong with these kids?
Brother, ew.
Is it a girl or boy? I don't know.
Why you look like that? The community doesn't claim you.
It's clear that to many of these commenters, my humanity drips away simply for being queer. That homophobia is a major reason why a lot of people get upset when someone else sees queerness in a relationship. When they see someone shipping a queer relationship, the homophobia inside of them lights up and they go on the attack. The result is people getting really heated and hateful when arguing against JayVik enjoyers simply because they see something in a story that they didn't. In many people's eyes, a character must be straight unless it's stated otherwise. In our society, most people are straight, and so most people assume that a character must be straight as well. This idea, in combination with the homophobia, is why some people get so upset when someone else sees queerness in a character. As I read through Reddit threads to get a general feel of the conversation around the JayVik ship, I saw two consistent points brought up as proof that Jayce and Viktor must be straight. Jayce and Mel's relationship is never explicitly defined in Arcane, but they do literally fuck and likely more than once. Therefore, Jayce must be a straight man, right? I saw many comments making this argument, but that completely ignores the fact that bisexual and pansexual people exist. Trust me, I should know. Like I established, canon doesn't matter for a person's individual interpretation of a story. Jayce never says, I'm straight in Arcane, but even if he did, that doesn't change any of the love, care, and desire that he displays for Viktor. A gay person can still see Jayce's story and see a part of themselves in that and gain a desire for a romantic relationship with all the same qualities displayed in Jayce and Viktor's relationship. The more copium-filled argument I see, though, involves Viktor. Some people will use Skye and Viktor's relationship as evidence that he must be straight. No, bro, come on, did we even watch the same show? Viktor blows Skye off multiple times and never responds to her advances. He's sad about her death because she's a human being who was killed by his own experiments. Skye literally says he won't miss her when she fades away during season 2. Of course, one of the points of this video though is to discuss how canon doesn't matter for seeing a relationship in something that's not necessarily there. So if you saw something in Skye and Viktor's relationship, then good for you, but that's not the point of the video. Even if their relationship was more romantic or, well, a relationship in any real way, everything I've said about canon not mattering in order for someone to relate to a character applies here as well. And even if you're still going to argue canon, the quote I shared from Christian Link earlier states that he always saw Viktor as asexual. Therefore, Viktor is canon queer representation. I've shown how homophobia still exists and how it can cause a lot of disdain that some people feel when they see a queer person relating to a character. While this is important, it's not the full picture. Let's dig a little deeper and take a look at what really causes all of this homophobia.
Part 5. What lies in the dark. Male socialization.
If I really wanted to phone it in, I could just talk about how religion and society have painted gay people as evil, sinful, and deviant over the last few hundred years. But everyone watching already knows that. I find it far more interesting to discuss male socialization and the way it plays a role in the anger displayed at these queer ships. When I say male socialization, I specifically mean gender roles and the way our society reacts to them. When you think of a man, what comes to mind? More than likely it's someone like Hugh Jackman, Ron Swanson, or Joel Miller. You think of beards, muscles, independence, dominance, aggression, and even loneliness. These gender roles have shifted and changed over the years, but the core of what being a man is supposed to be has stayed pretty stagnant in modern Western society. A man is supposed to be a provider, stoic, strong, competitive, and a leader. Independently, these traits are not bad things, but when our society focuses so deeply on these qualities and what they look like, things can get pretty warped. For example, I actually really like Stoicism. I'm no philosophy tube, but from my basic understanding of what Stoicism is, it can really help people understand and navigate their emotions. But when it comes to men as a whole, that Stoicism has been warped into something deeply negative. In our society, men aren't supposed to share, show, or express emotions. They're supposed to be cement walls at all times.
Being stoic is sometimes associated with toxic emotional repression. Men having no feelings, never asking for help.
This is a very negative view of what Stoicism is, and it only serves to hurt men. If men display emotions or affections, a lot of people will see them as weak or less than. Brokeback Mountain shows this off really well, actually. Jack Twist and Ennis Del Mar meet each other while herding sheep on Brokeback Mountain one summer in the 1960s. They eventually start to do the dirty, and a relationship sort of ensues. Ennis is very closed off to Jack throughout the start of their relationship on the mountain. He even tells Jack that he's not a queer.
You know I ain't queer.
On one of their last days there, Jack starts to tease Ennis on the mountain. Ennis's toxic masculinity takes over and he punches Jack. Once they leave the mountain and go their separate ways, all of Ennis's suppressed and pent-up emotions take over him and he breaks down and sobs. He's even seen by a passerby and he screams at the man.
What the fuck are you looking at? Ah!
Ennis's complete inability to express himself continues to be a major issue in the pair's relationship as the movie carries forward. Ennis is a perfect example of the toxic side of shoving your emotions down, and this whole conversation is a big focus of Brokeback Mountain's themes. This same type of distortion applies to all of the other positive traits I listed before and many others in regards to men and their masculinity. These traits aren't exclusive to only men either, but that's outside of the scope of this video. My point in bringing all that up was to lead into the conversation around the anger that some men show at the idea of gayness. In the eyes of many people, being queer discredits a lot of men from fitting into those male stereotypes. It discredits their manhood. This is also an idea that's explored in Brokeback Mountain, but I'll move on from that film. Heterosexuality is deeply entwined with masculinity in our society. Breaking away from heterosexuality in any sort of way brings out all of that homophobia we discussed, and it discredits the gay man from being seen as a man in the eyes of a lot of people. Even if that gay man fits into every single other male stereotype out there, a lot of people will see him as less manly simply for being gay. This highlights their underlying homophobia and their own insecurities with their own masculinity. If someone sees being queer as something negative or bad, they'll get extremely upset if anyone even implies that they might be queer.
You didn't go up there to fish. You
You don't know nothing about her.
Okay, seriously, I'll move on from Brokeback Mountain now. A lot of gay stereotypes completely contradict your typical male stereotype. Some of these stereotypes include liking makeup and fashion, having a more feminine voice, and taking it in the ass. All of these stereotypes are seen as feminine, and so a lot of men see being called labeled gay or queer as an attack on their masculinity. These men can't possibly bear the idea of being seen as feminine or less masculine or anything of the sort, and so they get angry. In a similar vein, a homophobic person will reel at the idea of a family member being queer because to them, that makes them less of a man. When those two groups of people see other people calling Jayce and Viktor queer or gay or anything of the sort, those same sorts of reactions light up inside of them. They view that queer interpretation as an attack on the masculinity of Jayce and Viktor, two characters who they clearly love a lot. They view these queer interpretations as an attack on the masculinity of these characters, and in their eyes, that acts to devalue Jayce and Viktor and their friendship. A simpler way to say what I've been saying is a very famous buzzword, toxic masculinity. A short dive into any manosphere content will show you that toxic masculinity is very much alive and well. I actually made a full video about Andrew Tate and why he's a horrible role model for men if you want to check that one out after this one. It'll be linked at the top of the description if you're interested. Toxic masculinity is when these typical male traits are taken to the extremes. My example earlier about stoicism is an incredible example of this. Understanding your emotions and controlling your responses to those emotions is a good thing. But when that idea turns into showing no emotion and suppressing your feelings instead, well, that's toxic masculinity right there. Many of these angry and upset commenters' homophobic fire is fueled by toxic masculinity. These characters that they love so much can't be gay because to them, that makes them less of a man. With all of that being said, this still isn't the full story of what's going on here. You see, Viktor and Jayce both break from male gender roles in a few notable ways. Most importantly, they express their love and they share their emotions. The biggest example of this is the final scene between the pair before they disappear into the void, but there are plenty of other scenes throughout the show that help reinforce this idea. For one, we see Jayce express his worry for Viktor numerous times after he learns about his fatal illness. He even rests his head on Mel's lap while discussing these feelings and emotions at one point in the series, something that's largely seen as weak or beta by a lot of manosphere bros. Viktor even directly states at the start of season 2 that it was simply their affection for each other that kept them together. Both characters are unafraid to express their emotions or share how they're feeling, and that breaks away from general male stereotypes in a few important ways. Even though they do break away from your typical male presentation in media, that doesn't make them less of a man. Instead, Jayce and Viktor show us what positive masculinity looks like. They represent the traits I listed before, but in a positive and healthy way. Jayce and Viktor don't shove their emotions down, but instead they navigate them in healthy ways. They work hard to fix their problems, but don't get upset when they need help. And they actually express themselves to the important people in their lives. All of this shines a light on an even deeper reason why some men get extremely upset at the JayVik ship. Let's dive deeper one last time and look at this whole situation with a little bit of empathy for the angry commenters.
Part 6. A little bit of empathy.
Toxic masculinity and homophobia are certainly huge factors in a lot of the anger put on display by some people, but I also don't think that that's everything. For a lot of the more hateful comments, I certainly believe that those are the main factors driving them, but with the less egregious comments, I think there's a different motivation in those commenters arguing against the romance. You see, I don't actually believe that men enjoy toxic masculinity. The patriarchy certainly hurts women a lot more, but toxic masculinity also works to hurt men. It's no secret that people today are feeling alone and isolated. While a lot of that has to do with our online world, another big part of it is toxic masculinity. As men embrace the social norms that have been passed down for decades, their quality of life degrades. I think the best example for this is suicide rates. According to the CDC, suicide rates among men was 4 times higher than that of women in 2022. They also found that while men only make up 50% of the population, they account for 80% of suicides. It's clear that something in our society is affecting men and driving them towards this undoable act. I argue that this is largely due to toxic masculinity. As men shove their emotions down, refuse to show their love or affections for others, and push people away by joining movements like the Red Pill, they just become ever more isolated and alone. Many of these men are choosing to end things early instead of trying something new and breaking away from the social norms that society has surrounded them with. The universal love for Jayce and Viktor's friendship shows this off even more. As I said, Jayce and Viktor break away from a lot of gender norms in a few notable ways. This breakage allows for both Viktor and Jayce to understand themselves more and to build deeper and more meaningful relationships because of it. Some of these upset commenters see this and they long for it. They wish for a friendship that's as deep and meaningful as Jayce and Viktor's, that's free from our current societal norms. I highly doubt that they consciously think that, but they certainly feel it. They want someone who will love and support them in their efforts, someone who drives them forward, and someone who will care for them and who they can care for in turn. Men don't like their stale and emotionless relationships, but they feel stuck in that box due to our current gender norms. When these frustrated fans see Viktor and Jayce's friendship, they feel hope for their own lives and connections. So to them, when they see someone brush all of that aside and say that they must be gay, to them, that's a personal attack on the hope they have for their lives. This post I found on r/Arcane shows this off nicely. The OP says this near the end of the post.
You were telling me that in their last scene, they just randomly turned gay because they dared to show some emotions? Are men not allowed to show emotions toward their dearest friends because that makes them gay? What am I missing?
In response to the poster, men are certainly allowed to show and share their emotions, and I greatly encourage it. Showing that emotion breaks through elements of toxic masculinity that does indeed grip a lot of men. It doesn't make someone less of a man because they show emotion, but instead it makes them more of a human. What OP is missing here is that other people reading that relationship as queer has no bearing on how they interpret the story and how it impacts them. What matters in a story is how it impacts you and what you can take away from it. This applies to many of the other close friendships displayed in media. I started this video by sharing my story after I posted a video called The Queer Subtext on Steel Ball Run. And everything I've said in this video about Jayce and Viktor applies to Johnny and Gyro's relationship as well. Johnny Joestar especially. Johnny breaks away from what a man should be many times. He cries at many different points in the story, and his whole character arc is about him exploring and overcoming his personal trauma. These stories are deeply loved by a lot of men, and yet some of these same men would call someone crying and exploring their emotions like Johnny Joestar does a weak soy boy cuck. Our society has conditioned us into these gender roles, and many people want to break free from those restrictive boxes. The love for these friendships proves that. When this same type of emotion and love is showed in real life, many people default into their programming and they call men like Jayce, Viktor, and Johnny weak. This doesn't excuse a lot of the homophobia and toxic masculinity that fuels the anger at a lot of these queer ships and queer readings, but I still think it's important to acknowledge and discuss this aspect of this conversation. By now, I've made my case around this whole topic. I'd love to hear what you think about all of this. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. See ya.
Don't you worry, it'll be okay. Don't you worry, spit and come, you make my life okay.